Once again, together with Father Ken, it's good to have you with us today. We step aside from our usual Sunday celebrations as we mark this very special feast, solemnity of all the saints. It's a feast that not only helps us recall those people that we remember during the course of the year. There's big-time saints who have a special celebration on their own, but we especially remember all the saints who were never formally canonized, but are saints nonetheless. And as we remember them today, we certainly hope that someday down the road that we will join in their company. I was thinking that next year it will be 50 years since I started the second part of my formation for the priesthood. My first 4 years were here at St. Paul's. And our bishop then, Bishop Vincent Leonard, assigned me to go to St. Mary's Seminary and University, which is in Baltimore, Maryland. It's the oldest Catholic seminary in our country. It was established in 1791. We still send some of our guys there to be formed for the Holy Priesthood. When I came there in the fall of 1971, there were 575 seminarians over a course of 4 years. They came from all parts of the country, but a very heavy concentration from the East Coast, all the way from Maine, all the way down to the tip of Florida. There were 133 in my class as well. And I think you can certainly imagine moving into an institution that was relatively far away from Ambridge, where I grew up, 283 miles to be exact. It was a little bit daunting to move in with that kind of a crowd, not knowing a whole lot of people and wondering, am I ever going to make it? Am I ever going to be able to handle the academics? Because St. Mary's had a reputation for being pretty tough. And am I going to be able to mix in with the crowd that's here? And I think all of you know what that feels like. Going to the first day of school back in kindergarten or first grade, or when you had a chance to go to college for the first time, or when you began to start a new job, there is that feeling of wanting to make sure that I can fit in, that I can be a part of this particular group. And so it wasn't too long after our first day there that friendships began to form, and I was so blessed to have two special friends. Tom, who was from the Diocese of Paterson in North Jersey, and Joe, who was from the Diocese of Camden in South Jersey, and myself. And over the course of the 4 years that we were there, we did an awful lot together. We studied together, and we prayed together. And we cried together. We laughed together. We went out to dinner. We went for a number of years on vacation together. But I've got to tell you that one of the beautiful parts of the friendship came when we started going to each other's homes. When we went to Tom's family in northern Jersey and were able to meet his sister and brothers and his mother, and all that had formed him up to that particular point. And we went to South Jersey to be at Joe's parents' house. And I was so excited to be able to take Tom and Joe to Ambridge to meet my parents for the first time. And that even sealed the friendship in an even stronger way. Well, all of that pales, and I'm sure that you can, also recount those experiences in your own friendships. But all of that pales in light of the excitement that Jesus has of wanting us to come to know his Father. As I announced last Sunday, I made my annual retreat this week, and I've got to tell you that I spent an awful lot of time praying over Jesus' prayer at the Last Supper in John's Gospel, John chapter 14 through 17. And while this was a pretty heavy moment for Jesus and the apostles, because Jesus was now very much aware of the fact that he was going to be betrayed, not once, but twice, and was going to have to suffer for it, there was an undercurrent of excitement on the part of Jesus. Think about when we open up the scriptures, how many times in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus is talking about his Father. And in that particular passage, the Last Supper discourse, as it's formally called, I counted it up. Jesus talked about his Father 48 times. 48 times. That's how excited he was about making sure that the apostles were not going to let everything drop that they had done together over the course of 3 years, but that if they were going to in fact follow in the footsteps of Jesus, they really had to come to know the Father better. And certainly that had to be at the basis of the passage that we just heard today, the second reading today that comes from John, Jesus' best buddy. As a matter of fact, the first 2 readings came from John from the book of Revelation, and then also the passage from his letter. And it's important to note that when John was writing this letter to the Christian community, this was a community that was already under fire. People thought they were crazy. Christians were being persecuted. And so John puts it right out there and says, the reason why people don't know who we are, the reason why people don't respect us as followers of Jesus Christ, is because they never got to know the Father. And see, the point of what John was reflecting in his letter is something that obviously he heard Jesus say many times in the course of the 3 years of public ministry with Jesus, but especially in that Last Supper discourse. That John's making the point that Jesus tried to teach him and all the other apostles. Once you get to know the Father, there's not going to be any stopping you from wanting to become like him. And when you become like him, then what will ultimately happen is that you end up being with my Father and myself and the Holy Spirit forever and always in heaven. And so today, my sisters and brothers, as we mark this feast of All Saints, we can be ever so grateful for all of those people, the famous saints and the ones that were not so famous. Because what they really wanted to do in their life was to really come to know the Father so that they could become more like him. Now, let's not kid ourselves. You know, the fact of it is the saints struggled to let coming to know the Father really take root in their lives. And that didn't mean that they didn't have some pretty serious faults. You know, many of us know that one of the important saints who helped in the translation of the Bible was St. Jerome. Well, they say that St. Jerome had such a horrible temper that nobody wanted to be around him. Or Frances Cabrini, you know, a woman who made such a great impact on our own country, was known to be a micromanager, that she always wanted to have things her own way. And we know that St. Francis of Assisi struggled with chastity in his life. The important thing for those saints is that they desired to want to come to know God better. They desired to want to become like God. They desired to really get to heaven. And they used the struggles of their own humanness to be able to get there. So now the spotlight's on you and me. You and I are called to be saints as well. And the first step that we've got to do if we're going to be serious about wanting to get to heaven, the first thing that we've got to be able to do is come to know God better and to let God be God in our lives. To let him give us the pat on the back that maybe nobody else will. To let him show us mercy when other people don't seem to want to show any kind of consideration for us. To let him be able to love us from his heart so that we can open our hearts to him as well. And once again, the point that Jesus was trying to make, once you come to know the Father, that's going to be the deepest desire in your own hearts, to become more like my Father. You know, I was thinking about, I think he was a philosopher in the 19th century, Friedrich Nietzsche, who was an atheist. And he oftentimes blasted Christians. But perhaps maybe one piece of wisdom that we can learn about from him about ourselves was this. He said, you know what the problem is with you Christians? You don't look saved. Well, it seems to me, my sisters and brothers, we got a solution for that one. And the solution is the invitation that St. John gives to us today in that second letter that's based on Jesus' teaching throughout his public ministry, that we need to be able to come to know God better and to let God be God in our lives. And if we're willing to let that happen, then sure as we are here celebrating this feast today, we're going to want to become more like God, because we want to really be able to make sure that we can get to heaven. And we've got lots of examples, some whom we know personally, who show us how to do that. May the best way that we celebrate this feast today is not only thank God for all of those saints who've gone before us, who teach us a thing or two about what it means to live life and to live life with faith, but let's also thank the Lord that he can give us the grace to help us become saints, like all those people whom we remember so beautifully today.